Okay, so let's unpack this. We all have this very specific image in our heads of what it means to be human. You look in the mirror, you see a human, you look at your friends, humans, it feels singular, like we are the humans. But I was reading through the stack of research for today, and it completely wrecked that assumption for me. Because for the vast majority of our time on this planet, we weren't alone. And I don't mean aliens, I mean other humans.
It's a startling thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we tend to view our history as a solo act, like a monologue.
Right.
But the reality is, for most of our existence, it was a very loud, very crowded ensemble cast.
To be honest, I struggle to picture it any other way. When I think human, I just think us. It feels so inevitable that we're the ones here, but I guess the mission of this deep dive is to shatter that inevitability. We're looking at the skeletons in our closet, literally. We're going to talk about our lost siblings, the insane biological cost of our big brains, and how we went from being these anxious, middle-of-the-food-chain scavengers to, what does the source material call it?
Anxious dictators.
Anxious dictators. Yeah, that phrase really sticks with you.
It does. And to understand why we fit that description, we really have to look at the timeline. Because when we say history, we usually mean the last few thousand years.
Pyramids, Rome, the internet, that sort of thing.
Exactly. But the context here is much, much deeper.
Okay, so help me visualize the scale here, because my brain usually taps out after the Industrial Revolution.
Well, think of it this way. Physics, the story of matter and energy. That began about 13.5 billion years ago with the Big Bang.
Okay.
Chemistry kicked in maybe 300,000 years later. Biology, the story of organisms, started roughly 3.8 billion years ago.
Right.
But history, the development of human cultures, that only started about 70,000 years ago. So today, we're focusing on that murky, massive stretch of time before history.
When biology was the only thing that mattered.
Yes, we were just animals, just another animal, an animal of really no significance.
Yeah.
If you hiked through East Africa 2 million years ago, you'd see archaic humans. You'd see mothers cuddling babies, young guys thumping their chests.
The usual stuff.
The exact same social dynamics you'd see in a troop of chimpanzees or baboons. There was absolutely nothing special about them. Nothing that indicated they would one day build cathedrals or split the atom.
That is. Well, it's a bit humbling.
It is.
But let's get back to this idea of other humans. Because I think most people, like me, believe human equals us. You know, human is the brand name for Homo sapiens.
And that's a very common misconception. Human simply means an animal belonging to the genus Homo sapiens. That's us. We're just one species within that genus.
So it's like, okay, imagine we're a bulldog. But there were also spaniels and golden retrievers and poodles running around. They were all dogs.
That's a fair analogy.
Yep.
And we aren't orphans, despite how we like to see ourselves. We have a very loud family of great apes. Chimpanzees are our cousins.
Right.
But more disturbingly, to us, we had brothers and sisters.
Okay, let's run through this family reunion because the cast of characters is just wild. I was reading through the source material, and some of these I'd vaguely heard of, but others sounded like fantasy creatures.
Well, the most famous sibling is Homo neanderthalensis, Neanderthals. They lived in Europe and Western Asia.
And wait, the stereotype is that they were dumb brutes, right? The classic caveman with a club.
Which is largely unfair and incorrect. They were bulky, muscular, and incredibly well adapted to the freezing Ice Age climates. But here's where it gets fascinating.
What's that?
They had bigger brains than we do.
Hold on. Bigger brains. I always pictured them as, well, dumb.
Yeah.
If they had bigger brains, why is Neanderthal an insult?
Propaganda by the victors, perhaps.
Yes.
But yes, they were very sophisticated. Then, over in East Asia, you had Homo erectus, or upright man. And they hold a record that sapiens will likely never, ever break. They survived there for close to 2 million years.
2
No.
million
Yeah.
years. And we've only been around for, what, a fraction of that?
A tiny fraction. We might not make it another 1,000 years, let alone 2 million. But the diversity didn't stop there. On the island of Java, you had Homo soloensis. And on the island of Flores, things got really strange.
This was the part that blew my mind. The hobbits, right? I had to double check that this wasn't from a fantasy novel.
It really sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Homo floresiensis. This is a perfect example of how environment shapes biology. See, sea levels rose, and these humans got trapped on the island.
Okay.
Now, on an island, resources are limited. If you're big, you need a lot of food, and if there isn't enough, you die.
So being big is actually a disadvantage there?
Exactly. Evolution favored the small. The people who needed less food survived and passed on their genes. Over generations, they became dwarves. They stood only about a meter tall and weighed maybe 25 kilograms.
But they were still human. They weren't monkeys or anything.
Oh, fully human. They made stone tools. And get this, the island also had elephants. But because of the same evolutionary pressure, the elephants had also shrunk.
No way!
So you had dwarf humans hunting dwarf elephants.
That is such a surreal image.
Yeah.
And we're still finding new siblings, right? Like as recently as 2010.
Yes, in the Denisova cave in Siberia, scientists found a fossilized finger bone. That's it, just a finger bone.
And from that, they found a whole new species.
Genetic analysis proved it was a completely new species, now known as Homo denisova. It really makes me wonder what else is buried out there.
So, okay, we have all these different types of humans running around, but I think the biggest aha moment for me was debunking that March of Progress image. You know the one?
Oh yes,
Okay.
the monkey turns into a stooped human who stands up straighter and eventually becomes a guy in a suit with a briefcase.
Yeah, that linear progression. It's everywhere.
And it is one of the most damaging misconceptions in evolutionary biology. It implies that Ergaster begat Erectus, who begat Neanderthals, who begat us, like older models of an iPhone being replaced by the new one.
But that's not how it was. It wasn't an upgrade path.
No. From about 2 million years ago until maybe 10,000 years ago, the world was home to several human species at the same time.
That changes everything. It wasn't a relay race where we took the baton. It was a crowded room.
A very crowded room.
Mm.
And we were just one of the people in it.
So if there were so many of us, why did we end up running the place? The sources talk a lot about our expensive machinery, specifically our brains and how we walk.
Right. Which brings us to the big brain paradox. We just assume big brains are always better. But, think about it. If they were the ultimate survival tool, why didn't cats evolve them?
Or bears, yeah.
In the wild, a big brain is a massive liability.
Because of the fuel cost, the energy.
Exactly. Think of the body like a strict budget. You have a limited number of calories coming in. In Homo sapiens, the brain is about 2–3% of total body weight,
Okay.
but it consumes 25% of the body's resting energy.
25%. Wow, that is massive.
Compare that to other apes, whose brains only require about 8% of rest time energy. So if you want to run this supercomputer in your skull that burns a quarter of your budget, you have to cut funding somewhere else.
You can't have the supercomputer and the giant muscles of a chimp.
The math doesn't work. We paid for our big brains by having our muscles atrophy. It's a risky strategy. I mean, in the middle of the savannah, a chimp could tear a human apart. We are surprisingly weak.
But we also stood up. That's the other big human thing, walking on two legs.
Bipedalism. It has advantages. You can scan the savannah for lions, your hands are free for tools, but the physiological cost was immense.
This is where my back pain comes from, isn't it?
Backaches and stiff necks are absolutely the legacy of evolution. But the biggest cost was paid by women. See, walking upright required narrower hips. But at the same time, because of that supercomputer brain, babies' heads were getting bigger.
So narrower hips plus bigger heads. That sounds like a terrible engineering flaw.
It was a lethal combination. Death in childbirth became a major, major hazard. So natural selection started favoring premature birth.
You mean women who gave birth earlier?
Earlier, when the baby's head was still small and soft, they survived more often, passed on their genes.
So we are all born premature, basically.
Biologically, yes. Compares to a horse. A foal can trot shortly after birth. It's like a piece of glazed earthenware coming out of a kiln. It's set.
Okay.
Humans are born like molten glass. We're helpless. We're unfinished.
But that unfinished state is actually crucial, right? Because if we're born molten, we can be molded.
Precisely. And it forced us to be social. A lone human mother could rarely forage enough food for herself and a helpless infant. Raising a child required constant help.
A tribe.
It required a tribe. Evolution favored those capable of forming strong social ties. We didn't choose to be social. Our biology forced us into it.
So our defect of being born early is actually the reason we built societies. That's incredible. But here's the thing that confuses me. We have these big brains, these tools, these social groups. You'd think we'd be kings of the jungle immediately.
Not quite.
But the source material makes a really humbling point. For 2 million years, we weren't the hunters. We were the hunted.
We were solidly in the middle of the food chain. We weren't apex predators at all. We hunted small creatures, gathered plants, and spent a lot of time hiding from big cats.
I love the detail about the marrow scavengers. It says early humans filled a niche similar to woodpeckers.
It's a vivid image, isn't it? Imagine a pride of lions takes down a giraffe. You're watching from the bushes. You want meat, but you're too weak to fight the lions.
So you wait.
You wait, and the lions leave, and the hyenas come. You have to wait for them to. Finally, when only the bones are left, you creep in. But because you have stone tools, you can crack the bones and get at the marrow that the others couldn't reach.
Eating the leftovers of the leftovers, that's our heritage.
And it shaped our psychology. This is the key to understanding the modern world. We only jumped to the top of the food chain very, very recently, in the last 100,000 years or so.
And the argument is that this jump was too fast, right? Like getting a promotion you aren't ready for.
Far too fast. If you look at lions or sharks, they evolved into that top spot over millions of years. The ecosystem had time to develop checks and balances. Gazelles evolved to run faster.
Rhinos got bad tempers.
Exactly. But sapiens jumped so quickly that the ecosystem didn't have time to adjust.
And we didn't have time to adjust either.
That is the dangerous part. This is where the term anxious dictators comes in. A lion is a majestic ruler. It's confident. We are more like the leader of a banana republic who just sees power in a coup. We're terrified of losing it.
So is this why we destroy ecosystems?
Yeah.
Because we're just insecure.
It's a compelling theory. Because we were the underdog for so long, we act like we're still starving.
Yeah.
We don't have those internal brakes on consumption that an established predator has.
We're a middle management guy who suddenly became CEO and is terrified everyone is going to fire him.
A bleak but accurate analogy. Our power grew much faster than our wisdom.
Okay, so we're weak, we're anxious, we're bad at digesting raw food. By all accounts, we should have got extinct. What was the cheat code?
The kitchen.
The kitchen.
The cooking revolution. The domestication of fire around 300,000 years ago. This changed absolutely everything.
I get that it gave us warmth and light, but how did it change us biologically?
It outsourced our digestion. A chimpanzee spends 5 hours a day just chewing raw food. It takes a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Cooking does the heavy lifting for you. It kills germs, softens fibers. We can eat a full meal in an hour.
And this links back to the brain budget we talked about.
Directly. Long intestines and big brains are both massive energy hogs. You can't really have both. By cooking food, our intestines could shorten. And that freed up the energy surplus needed to fuel the jumbo brains of Neanderthals and sapiens.
Plus, fire is the first time we controlled a force of nature.
An eagle can ride a thermal, but it can't create one. A human with a flint can burn down a whole forest. That's a level of control that separated us from every other animal.
Okay, so we have fire, we have superpowered brains, and about 70,000 years ago, sapiens start moving out of East Africa into Eurasia, but the house is already full.
It is. Neanderthals are in Europe, Erectus is in Asia.
So what happened when we met?
This is one of the biggest debates in the field. There are two main theories: the interbreeding theory and the replacement theory.
Basically. Did we make love or did we make war?
Essentially, yes. The interbreeding theory suggests attraction, mingling. Sapiens met Neanderthals, they bred, and today's humans are a mix.
And replacement?
The replacement theory tells a darker story. Incompatibility, revulsion, genocide. You suggest we wipe them out entirely.
For a long time, replacement was the standard theory, right? We like to think we were pure sapiens.
Yes, it was the consensus. It was also, frankly, politically safer. It avoided some tricky racial implications, but that all changed in 2010.
The DNA evidence.
It was a shock to the scientific community. They finally mapped the Neanderthal genome and compared it to modern humans. And it turned out that 1-4% of the DNA in modern populations in the Middle East and Europe is Neanderthal DNA.
So if I'm of European descent, I'm part Neanderthal.
You are. You're a hybrid. And it gets more specific. That finger bone from the Denisova cave, they mapped that too. Up to 6% of the DNA in modern Melanesians and Aboriginal Australians is Denisovan.
So it wasn't a total replacement. It was a leaky replacement.
Correct. It wasn't a full merger. We aren't 50-50.
Yep.
But it wasn't a total wipeout either. We are not pure.
That's mind-blowing. I mean, biology class taught me that different species can't reproduce. You know, horses and donkeys make sterile mules.
The definition of a species is a bit fuzzier than we like to admit. Horses and donkeys are pretty far apart. Sapiens and Neanderthals were much closer. It was rare, but it was possible.
But this raises the darker question. If we could interbreed, why are they gone? Why aren't there Neanderthals walking around New York today?
This is the clash of species. The source suggests two main reasons. One is just resource competition. We were simply better hunters and gatherers. We starved them out. That's the soft version.
And the harder version, knowing human nature.
Violence. As the text notes, tolerance is not a sapiens trademark. Look at our own history. We kill each other over small differences in skin color or religion. Imagine the reaction of a sapiens tribe meeting a Neanderthal band. They look different, they smell different, they speak differently. It's unlikely we would have just waved and walked by.
There's a psychological theory mentioned, the uncanny valley.
Yes. You know how we like robots that look like machines, like R2-D2?
Uh-huh.
But we feel sick when we see a robot that looks almost human, but not quite.
Yeah, it gives you the creeps. It's repulsive.
That revulsion is a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
And Neanderthals might have hit that exact spot. Too familiar to ignore, but too different to tolerate. They fell into the uncanny valley.
And so we likely wiped them out. The first ethnic cleansing.
It's a distinct possibility. We may have committed a genocide before we even invented writing.
There's a what-if thought experiment in the source material that really kept me up last night. What if Neanderthals had survived?
It changes everything, doesn't it?
It really does. Imagine walking into a Starbucks. The barista is a sapiens, but the guy behind you is a Neanderthal. He's stronger, he has that heavy brow, but he's reading a newspaper on his iPad. How does our society handle that?
It would fundamentally break our moral and religious structures. Think about the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal.
Would that apply to Homo neanderthalensis?
Would they have the right to vote? Or religion? Would the Bible mention them? Did they descend from Adam and Eve? Would Jesus have died for the sins of the Denisovans?
It sounds like a sci-fi novel.
But this was a very real possibility. We define human rights based on the fact that we're all one species. If there were others, would we have created a caste system, enslaved them?
Or would Karl Marx have urged workers of all species to unite? It complicates everything.
And it highlights that our belief in the unity of mankind might just be a convenient fiction made possible because we killed everyone who was different.
That is a heavy thought. So let's wrap this up. We started this deep dive thinking we were the special chosen ones.
And we found out we're actually just the last survivors of a chaotic family drama. We spent millions of years as marrow-scavenging underdogs. We evolved these expensive brains that forced us to give birth to helpless babies.
Which in turn forced us to become social. Then we discovered fire, cooked our way to even bigger brains, and exploded out of Africa.
Where we met our siblings. We interbred with them just enough to keep their genes alive in us, and then, likely through a mix of competition and violence, we pushed them into extinction.
Leaving us as the anxious dictators of the planet, scared of losing our spot, so we burned down the forest.
It's a lot to process. We're used to seeing this huge chasm between man and animal. But that chasm, it was created by us. We burned the bridge behind us when we destroyed our siblings.
So here is the final thought I want to leave you with today. We walk around feeling like the epitome of creation, the finished product. But maybe our sense of uniqueness is just a side effect of a crime scene. If our siblings were still here, if you could sit on the bus next to a Neanderthal, would you still feel separate from the animal kingdom? Or would you realize that we are just another ape that got lucky with a flintstone?
It is a question worth asking, because understanding that we are just one leaf on a very pruned branch might be the only thing that can cure that anxious dictator syndrome.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and keep questioning the timeline.
Until next time.